They dropped it. They actually dropped it. The Fallout Season 3 trailer is finally here, and I genuinely had to pause it, take a breath, and watch it again from the beginning because the first watch just wasn't enough. My brain was running 100 miles an hour trying to catch every single detail, every frame, every little hint they buried in there for us. And trust me, there is a lot to unpack. Because this isn't just a trailer that shows you explosions and cool shots to get you hyped. No, this trailer is telling us something. It's giving us pieces of a puzzle. And when you put them all together, what you see is honestly terrifying and exciting at the same time. So before we get into everything, I just want to say, if you thought Season 2 was intense, what's coming in Season 3 is going to hit completely different. And after watching this trailer multiple times, I genuinely believe this might be the most ambitious season they've ever attempted. So let's break it all down together, because there is so much to talk about. Let's start from the very beginning of the trailer, because the way it opens already tells you that the tone of Season 3 is going to be darker, heavier, and more brutal than anything we've seen before. The wasteland looks different, and I don't mean different in a small, subtle way. I mean, the whole atmosphere feels like something has shifted. Like the world itself knows that something massive is coming and it's already bracing for it. The skies look angrier, the ruins look more broken, and there's this overwhelming feeling of dread sitting over every single shot. And that's not by accident. The people behind this show are incredibly intentional with their visuals. And when the very first frames of a trailer feel this heavy, you know they're preparing you for something serious now. The first thing that genuinely stopped me cold was the wasteland itself being shown on a scale we haven't really seen before. In the previous seasons, we got a strong sense of how dangerous and wide the world was. But it always felt like we were experiencing it through specific locations and specific characters. Vegas, the vaults, the roads in between. But this trailer feels like it's pulling the camera back and showing us just how massive and how broken this world really is. And more importantly, how many different forces are now moving through it at the same time? Because that's what Season 3 is shaping up to be. It's not one story. It's multiple massive forces on a collision course, and our characters are right in the middle of all of it. And speaking of forces, the war in the wasteland is no longer just a background threat. It's front and center now. You can feel it in every shot. The New California Republic, the Brotherhood of Steel, the Legion, the Enclave, and Mr. House. All of them are moving. All of them have plans. And all of them believe that they are the ones who should be in control of what's left of this world. What makes this so fascinating and honestly a little frightening is that none of these factions are completely wrong in their own minds. They all have reasons. They all have justifications. And that moral complexity is exactly what makes Fallout so good. It never lets you fully root for one side without making you question it a moment later. And from what this trailer is showing us, Season 3 is leaning into that complexity harder than ever before. Now, let's talk about the Ghoul. Because the moment he appeared on screen, I felt my heart do something strange. A mix of excitement and worry that I wasn't prepared for. After everything that happened in the Season 2 finale, after finding that Colorado postcard in Barbara's empty capsule, the Ghoul now has a direction. He has a destination, and Colorado is waiting for him. But what the trailer seems to be telling us is that Colorado is not going to be a friendly place. Not even close. The environments we're seeing look rougher, more wild, and somehow even more dangerous than Vegas was. And if Vegas was already full of people trying to kill him, Colorado feels like it's going to be on a completely different level. There are shots in this trailer that suggest that Ghoul is going to be going up against threats that even his level of experience and ruthlessness might struggle with. And that's what makes his journey so compelling to watch, because the Ghoul isn't just searching for Barbara and Janie anymore. He's searching for a reason to still be human. He's been surviving for 200 years, doing terrible things, making terrible choices. And somewhere deep inside that broken and rotting body, there's still a man who loves his family. And this trailer gives us just enough glimpses of that internal war to remind us that this character is one of the most emotionally complex things this show has ever created. Every time I think I've figured out how I feel about him, the show does something that completely resets me. And I have a feeling Season 3 is going to push that even further. But here's what really got to me in this first part of the trailer. It wasn't the action. It wasn't the explosions or the monsters or the armies. It was a small moment, a quiet one. A shot that lasts maybe 2 seconds but hit me harder than almost anything else in those 2 minutes. And it involves Lucy. She looks different, not just in the physical sense, although yes, Her appearance has clearly changed after everything she went through in season 2. She looks different in her eyes. There's something in the way she's carrying herself that tells you the Lucy who walked out of Vault 33 with wide-eyed optimism is completely gone now. And what's taken her place is something harder, something sharper, but also something deeply sad. Because she never wanted to become this, she just got pushed so far by the world outside that she had no choice but to adapt. And seeing that transformation captured in just a single look in this trailer genuinely made me emotional in a way I didn't expect. This is exactly why this show works so well. It remembers that underneath all the chaos and the politics and the war, there are real human beings being broken and rebuilt by an impossible world. Now, let's talk about something that I genuinely could not stop thinking about after watching this trailer, and that is Steph. Because if you thought she was dangerous in season 2, what this trailer is suggesting about her in season 3 is something else entirely. Something colder, something more calculated, and honestly, something that scared me more than any monster or mutant we've seen in this show so far. Because the thing about Steph is that she doesn't need claws or weapons or an army to be terrifying. She has something far more dangerous than all of that. She has power over the vaults. And now, with Vault-Tech's full support behind her and Phase 2 officially set in motion, she is stepping into a role that is going to affect every single person still living underground in ways they cannot even begin to imagine yet. What the trailer seems to be showing us is a version of Steph that has completely shed whatever remaining hesitation she might have had before. In season 2, there were still moments where you could see the conflict in her. Moments where you could sense that somewhere underneath the ambition and the manipulation, there was still a person making choices. Hard choices. Yes. Terrible choices. Absolutely. But choices that still felt human. What I'm seeing in this trailer feels different. She moves differently. She speaks differently. There's a stillness to her now that is far more unsettling than anger ever could be. Because anger is loud and visible and you can prepare for it. But this version of Steph is quiet and precise and completely certain. And that certainty is what makes her the most frightening character heading into season 3. And the vaults themselves, let's talk about what Phase 2 actually means for the people still living inside them. Because I don't think everyone fully grasped just how dark that concept is when it was first introduced at the end of season 2. Vault-Tech didn't build the vaults to save humanity. That was never the real plan. The vaults were experiments. The people inside them were test subjects. And Phase 2 is essentially Vault-Tech deciding that the experiment is ready to move into its next stage, which means the already suffocating control that existed inside the vaults is about to become something so much worse. The trailer gives us glimpses of vault interiors that look tighter, darker, and more oppressive than anything we've seen before. The lighting is different. The people look different. There's a fear in their faces that goes beyond the normal anxiety of vault life. It looks like something fundamental has changed in how these spaces are being run. And if Steph is the one running them now, that change is not going to be in anyone's favor except hers. Now, I want to bring up something that the trailer shows very briefly, but that I think is going to be one of the most important storylines of the entire season. And that is what's happening with the vault inhabitants who are starting to push back. Because here's the thing, you can only control people for so long before something breaks. Before someone decides that the fear isn't worth it anymore, and the trailer seems to hint that there are people inside these vaults who are reaching that breaking point. You can see it in certain faces. You can feel it in certain shots. A quiet kind of resistance building underneath the surface of all that control. And if that resistance finds the right leader, if it finds someone who knows both the vault world and the outside world, someone like Lucy, for example, then Steph's carefully constructed dictatorship could start cracking from the inside out. And that possibility alone is enough to make me desperate for season 3 to arrive as fast as possible. But let's shift focus for a moment because the trailer also gives us something regarding Maximus that completely took me by surprise. And I say that as someone who has been one of the biggest defenders of his character since season 1. I've always believed in Maximus even when the show made it difficult. Even when other people dismissed him or saw him as just comic relief or a lovable fool stumbling through the wasteland, I always saw something deeper in him. A genuine desire to be good in a world that keeps trying to convince him that goodness is a weakness. And after that extraordinary moment in the season 2 finale where he stood against the death claws with nothing but a shield and a pipe, I thought I had a solid idea of where his story was going. I thought I understood what season 3 had planned for him. And then this trailer showed me something that made me realize I had absolutely no idea. Because Maximus in this trailer is not the same person we left at the end of season 2. Something has happened to him, something significant, and the show is being very careful about exactly what that is, which tells me it's something they want us to discover in real time rather than going in prepared. But what I can say, based on what I'm seeing, is that Maximus appears to be carrying a weight in this season that is heavier than anything he's dealt with before. There are moments in this trailer where he looks genuinely lost. Not physically lost in the wasteland, but internally lost. Like someone who achieved something he'd been working toward his whole life and then discovered that achieving it didn't make things simpler. It made them infinitely more complicated. And that kind of storytelling, that kind of emotional honesty about what it actually means to become the hero you always wanted to be, is exactly why Maximus has always been my favorite part of this show. Because his story has never been about whether he can win the fight. It's always been about whether he can figure out who he actually is underneath the armor. And season 3 looks like it's going to push that question to its absolute limit. Now here is where things get really interesting. And I mean that in the kind of way where your stomach drops a little and you lean forward without even realizing it. Because the trailer starts doing something in its second half that I wasn't fully prepared for. It starts connecting dots, not in an obvious way, not in a way that spells everything out for you, but in that quiet, deliberate way that this show has always been brilliant at, where you're watching and something feels familiar, and then something else feels familiar. And then suddenly two things that seemed completely separate click together in your brain and you're sitting there with your mouth open wondering how you didn't see it coming. And the biggest connection this trailer is making, the one that I genuinely had to rewind and watch 3 times to make sure I was seeing it correctly, is the relationship between the Enclave and what's happening inside the vaults. Because here's what I think is going on, and tell me if this gives you the same feeling it gave me. The Enclave has always operated in the shadows. That's their whole thing. They don't show up on the battlefield with flags and armor the way the Brotherhood does. They don't take territory the way the Legion does. They work from behind. They pull strings. They position themselves inside systems that already exist, and then slowly, carefully, begin to redirect those systems toward their own goals. And when you look at what Vault-Tec is doing with Phase 2, when you look at how perfectly it aligns with the kind of control and experimentation that the Enclave has always been obsessed with, it becomes very hard to believe that these two things are happening independently of each other. The trailer doesn't confirm this outright, but it doesn't deny it either. And the way certain shots are edited together, the way certain images follow certain other images, feels very intentional. Like the show is whispering something to you without quite saying it out loud. And if the Enclave really is connected to what's happening in the vaults, then the stakes of everything going on with Steph in Phase 2 just multiplied by about 100. Because it would mean that the people pulling Steph's strings aren't just vault administrators or corporate executives with power-hungry ambitions. They would be something far older, far more organized, and far more dangerous. An organization that has been planning for the world after the war longer than almost anyone else still standing. An organization that doesn't make moves without having already calculated every possible response to that move. And the idea of Lucy and the Ghoul and Maximus going up against something like that, without even fully understanding what they're dealing with yet, is the kind of narrative tension that makes you feel genuinely anxious, in the best possible way. Now let's talk about Mr. House, because the trailer gives us something related to him that I've been thinking about nonstop since the first time I watched it, and I want to be careful here because the show is clearly guarding certain things very deliberately. But what I can say is that Mr. House's presence in Season 3 feels different from what we might have expected after the Ghoul awakened him at the end of Season 2. There was always this assumption, at least in my mind, that Mr. House would wake up, assess the situation, and immediately begin moving toward reclaiming Vegas and reestablishing his control over New Vegas as a power center. And yes, that still seems to be part of his plan. But the trailer is suggesting that his ambitions might extend further than just Vegas, much further. And the way he's being framed in certain shots, the way his presence seems to loom over multiple different storylines rather than just one, tells me that Mr. House is going to be operating on a scale in Season 3 that changes the entire shape of the conflict we're watching. What makes Mr. House such a fascinating force in this world is that, unlike every other faction fighting over the wasteland, he is genuinely playing a different game. The NCR wants order and expansion. The Brotherhood wants technology and control. The Legion wants domination through fear. The Enclave wants purity and power. But Mr. House wants something that's simultaneously simpler and more complex than all of them. He wants civilization, not just survival, not just control. Actual functioning civilization, rebuilt from the ashes of everything that came before. And he believes, with complete and unshakable conviction, that he is the only one capable of making that happen. Now, whether you agree with his methods or not, and there are very good reasons not to, that kind of certainty combined with that kind of intelligence and that kind of resources makes him one of the most compelling and unpredictable forces in this entire story. And the trailer is making it very clear that season 3 is going to put that force right at the center of everything. But here's the part of the trailer that broke my heart a little, and I wasn't expecting to feel that way, which made it hit even harder. There's a moment, brief but devastating, that seems to address the question of Barbara and Janie, the Ghoul's wife and daughter. The whole reason he woke up Mr. House, the whole reason he's heading to Colorado, and whatever this moment is showing us, it's not giving us the clean and hopeful answer that part of me was desperately holding on to. After that Colorado postcard in season 2, I'm not saying it confirms the worst. I genuinely don't know. And honestly, I think that's exactly what the trailer wants. It wants you sitting in that uncertainty. It wants you feeling that mix of hope and dread that the Ghoul himself must be feeling as he gets closer and closer to the truth. Because that emotional experience, that feeling of caring so deeply about what happens to these people, is exactly what this show does better than almost anything else on television right now. And this trailer weaponizes that feeling with complete precision. And now we've arrived at the part that I've been building toward this entire time. The part that kept me up at night after watching this trailer. The part that I genuinely believe is going to define not just season 3, but the entire future of this show going forward. Because everything we've talked about so far, the war in the wasteland, Steph's dictatorship, the Ghoul's journey to Colorado, Maximus finding himself, Mr. House's grand ambitions, the Enclave working from the shadows. All of it is connected by something that the trailer only shows you for a few seconds, but that carries more weight than almost anything else in those 2 minutes. And that thing is the question of what humanity actually means in a world that has been broken this completely. What does it mean to be human when the world ended 200 years ago? And everything that survived had to become something harder and crueler just to stay alive. That question has always been underneath this show. But season 3 looks like it's finally going to drag it all the way to the surface and force every single character to answer it directly. Start with Lucy because her arc in season 3 based on what this trailer is showing us is going to be the emotional core of everything. And I say that knowing full well that the Ghoul is the most compelling individual character on this show, and that Maximus has the most traditionally heroic journey. But Lucy is the one whose transformation means the most because she started from the furthest point away from this world. She came out of that vault believing in goodness, believing in people, believing that the right thing and the smart thing were usually the same thing if you just tried hard enough.